on another episode of the RFP podcast with we got Rob Harity with us from Bubba the Hunter. He's joined us, and we had a kind of a co-podcast, I guess. It was really, I don't know, I guess, would you call it last minute, Rob?
Yeah, it kind of was, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it
It
kind of
worked out well,
was.
though.
It worked out well, and it at first when you kind of brought it to my attention, I was like, yeah, that's certainly not my wheelhouse. But then, well, I don't think anything's my wheelhouse, but uh, I, we had two crabbers from the Chesapeake Bay region on, and I know nothing about crab fishing, blue crab fishing, and I know a little bit about the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So, but it turned into, man, some really good conversation. I mean, really good conversation about the watershed itself, about the crab business, the pollutant problem, et cetera, et cetera. And for a lot of people that don't know, the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is in, say, I don't know, mid 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 Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and down through. I mean, it encompasses, I think, 63,000 square miles, something like that. The Chesapeake Bay watershed. Um, Unfortunately, is highly polluted. The EPA, the Pennsylvania state government, everybody in all the states combined are working together trying to clean it up. And we had some crab fishermen on that fish in the bay every year. One has CJ Cantley, I think is how you pronounce the name, Rob.
CJ Canby and
Canby,
Luke McFadden. Yeah.
Luke McFadden. CJ had 26 years as a crab fisherman, and Luke has 8. But they both brought a lot of knowledge to the table. Luke, it's all he's ever done. He started working on crab boats, I think, when he was 12, he said, and got a boat right out of high school. And he's kind of made a name for himself with, what did he say? He had a billion with a B TikTok downloads.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He definitely has a lot of downloads. I know he's over like 1 million followers on TikTok. And I know he's transitioning that into YouTube and Instagram, certainly getting a following there for sure. And you mentioned it's, what is in your wheelhouse. I think it definitely did fall into your wheelhouse there, kind of, especially when you guys started talking about the water quality and stuff. And that's just eye-opening of what impacts the bay and the water quality, and it might be a lot of things that people don't think of initially. It's they're full of knowledge, and you kind of hit it when we were talking to them. Those guys are kind of like the quote-unquote biologists. You want to go out, you want to find out what's going on in the bay. Go to these guys, the watermen out in the bay that are there day in, day out. That's their livelihood out in the water. So they definitely have the knowledge, and so yeah, it was a good talk. So yeah,
and coincidentally, I had shared an email with you and Rob and Luke, or I mean you and CJ and Luke, and it was the day after or 2 days after I belong to Pennsylvania Outdoor Writers Association, and they do a highlight series every month. And it just so happened the month of February they highlighted the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, which is a foundation that's it's a nonprofit foundation that I don't want to say overseas, but puts a lot of time and resources into cleaning up the Bay program through the Clean Water Act and so forth. And their annual report had just come out. I hadn't saw it until after our podcast, which kind of gave me a little more data, but just, it was interesting to see that, and I knew that we were falling short on our metrics. The state of Pennsylvania, they had a 5-year plan with cleaning up the Bay, and it didn't come to fruition. And I know the state, along with the EPA, have been kind of changing their process a little bit, trying to do some things differently. But basically, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, with their scientists and their metrics, said on a scale that 70 is the target number. So if it's a metric type of scale, 1 to 70 or 1 to 100, I think it went 1 to 100, and 70 is the score that they want the bay to score when they call it good quality or high quality water. And it's scoring a 32. So I don't know what that means. Like, there's still things living in it, but, it's high in nitrogen, it's depleting oxygen. There's a ton of sediment. There's a ton of pollution, wastewater runoff from treatment plants, as we talked about. stormwater, nutrient management from farmers. I mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think I read somewhere a statistic, something in the last 5 years, but there's been 90,000 acres developed. And a lot of people don't realize when you take forested ground or ag ground and you develop it into shopping centers and parking lots and restaurants, you pave it, then the soil itself becomes, they call it impermeable. So meaning the water can't be soaked in. So it has to then run off when you get rainstorms. And with climate change, we get a lot more heavy rainstorms now than we used to, big, downpours. And you have all these porous surfaces or non-porous surfaces. It creates a lot of runoff and it collects a lot of debris and, fertilizer from lawns and oil from, spills. I mean, not just like big places, but I'm talking individual. So that all has to collect somewhere and it all runs somewhere and it all goes into a drain and the side of your street. And you think, well, it's gone now. Well, and then that goes somewhere, then that goes somewhere, then that goes somewhere. And ultimately it likely ends up in the bay. So anyway, that's what we're trying to clean up. That's what this podcast was about. We talked to some crab fishermen. It was really cool. We had some serious conversation and we ended it with some lighthearted conversation. And I think we agreed to do another podcast where it's more lighthearted conversation. And Rob and I volunteered to be deck hands on the Miss Paula and do some crab fishing for CJ.
Yeah, so CJ's on the fishing vessel Miss Paula, and Luke is on fishing vessel Southern Girl. So,
right.
Yeah. Hey, I'm all about going down there, too. And you mentioned the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. It'd be great to get someone from there on the podcast. Let's get their input on it because it just seems like there's a miss somewhere. It's not always there's something's amiss here.
And it's I was thinking about that as we were recording the podcast, and I've coming from the wildlife background that I do in my old job, I talked to a lot of hunters and I worked with a lot of biologists, and there was always just a little bit of disconnect. And it's easy for, I know hunters that hunt 190, 200 days a year. And I had one guy tell me one time, I saw this, that, and the other. I think I said it on the podcast, but you know what I didn't see in the woods this year? I was like, what's that? And he said, a biologist. So and I get that, but also, and I did when that person told me that, which was not long ago. I said, well, the biologists kind of do their work after the season because it wouldn't really do them any good to collect data during the season because then that data could change as somebody kills an animal, et cetera, et cetera. So, biologists do a lot of their work right now as far as when you're talking animals or mammals and deer, like they're doing pellet count studies. They're doing flyovers with because there's no foliage. So, I mean, they'll do trail camera surveys, pellet count studies. They'll do flyovers. So they get a pretty good handle on it. And then, they do another one in the fall as well before season. So I'm not trying to downplay at all. I think CJ and Luke both have a really good handle on what's going on in the bay. And I do believe that, but I also think there's probably a little bit more to the story that maybe they don't understand because some of the biologists I've worked around, or if not all of them, they take their job very serious. Most of them, I don't see a biologist entering that job in the Bay program and not really care about the Bay. So why wouldn't they do as best of a job as possible to try to figure out what's going on? Because it's trending the wrong direction. We're on the verge of losing one of the greatest watersheds in North America. And then Rob's, filling it up with snakeheads. So, I mean,
let them live. We could go on that. Yeah.
But anyway, So I agree. I think it would be really cool to get somebody on from the foundation, from the science background, and maybe walk us through how they look at things. But yeah, some interesting discussion. I did, and I even brought it up to one of my colleagues. CJ had mentioned when I shared with him the data that was sent to me, a day or so after via email. He said, he's heard it's been 30 years, the same stuff, farmers, watermen, industry, but, and he spoke of on the podcast about 2 wastewater treatment plants in and around Baltimore that dump, and he had the statistics, 63,000 or million gallons.
Yeah, he had the numbers, and that's what I want to know about, because if that's a real issue. I mean, and these
Yeah,
guys are
it's,
on the
so it's
water, so they know. You know,
yeah. No, and he said to me in the email, it's hard to blame the people that are paying you. So basically,
mm,
meaning, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation uh, and isn't going to come out against the wastewater treatment plants because that's local government. And a lot of that funding, you have to look at how the funding comes to them or who's paying for so man, I hate to say it, but I've seen that type of stuff before. It does happen. We'd be very naive to think it doesn't happen. That depending on where the funding comes from. I hate to bring up the thing we went through here in the last couple of years,
yeah,
and
for sure.
when you look at big pharma and how that happened. So I mean, at the end of the day, follow the money, man, and maybe there's some truth to that, but we don't. Is that's probably way above our pay, Greg. But it's interesting to know that that's how some of the watermen see it, and it probably uh, in all likelihood does take place. And we just have to be aware. That's all. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a good talk. They are definitely knowledgeable. All those years on the water, and the entertainment side of it too. They could be funny, and the crab wars that they have going on out there, and just to break up
Yeah.
the monotony of a typical crabbing season. So, and their
Yeah.
Instagram feeds show it all. So Luke is definitely good at that. He's got a good feed out there on YouTube, and so does CJ. So it's good stuff, good entertainment.
Check out their
Good.
Instagram feeds. Listen to this podcast. Get back to us. Let us know what you think. If you want more of the Eastern Shore and the Bay, let us know because that's Rob's backyard. That's home court right there for Rob.
That's my new home court. Yeah, my adopted
So
home area here. So
we'll get some more stuff out there.
good
Good
deal.
deal.